Okay, so this is really exciting for me. I'm here in Launceston in Tasmania, and come to visit and speak with Gary Fettke and his lovely wife Belinda, and they've been...
How come I'm not lovely?
Do you really want me to answer that, Gary? But they've been incredibly hospitable, had us stay with them for the few days that we're here, and I arrived yesterday, and it's been like, the more I talk to them, the more I feel like there's so much more that I want to capture on camera. So we're going to try and address a few issues here and possibly cut this into a couple of different videos for YouTube and the blog. So Gary, thank you very much for having us here and giving up your time to speak with us. And I think with most people, I really like to start with your story, and the more I've heard about it since yesterday, it's a pretty incredible story. So how you got started and found out about this, and how that translates to your patient care now.
Well, welcome to Tassie. It's good to have you both. I'm an orthopaedic surgeon, and I've been practicing in that way for 30 years. And over time, it's quite clear that our community is getting fatter and sicker and more arthritis. So I've been looking at it from a patient point of view for a long, long time, how to manage obesity, and we've been struggling. We've only got to walk down the street to see that we're failing as a society in the management of obesity, right, and certainly the prevention. And on top of that, I've had my own health journey, and it was nearly 20 years ago I had a tumour on the base of my brain, and I had surgery for it. I had chemotherapy, radiotherapy. At the same time, I was 23 kilos heavier than what I am now, which is nearly 50 pounds. I was pre-diabetic, I had high blood pressure, and I thought I was doing the right thing. I was eating healthy, I was running, I was exercising. So I have, like most people who have adopted LCHF, low carb, healthy fat living, I've often got a personal story. And so for me, I started on that journey 7 years ago, when I started thinking about the role of sugar in cancer metabolism and where that's played. And so I started off looking at sugar, and then I developed a website called nofructose.com on my early understanding. But it's no longer just about sugar, it's about sugar and, I believe, refined carbohydrates and polyunsaturated oils. And the three of those together I describe as a model of inflammation, and inflammation sits behind modern disease. And you think about everything, whether or not it's irritable bowel, or whether or not it's even diabetes, migraines, mental health issues, cancer, cardiovascular disease, it's all inflammation. So I've got this unifying theory, which can never be proven, but it can't be disproven. And it's that combination of sugar, particularly fructose, refined carbohydrates, which get turned back into fructose, and then they form low-density lipoproteins, the bad cholesterol particle, and then they become inflamed because of the polyunsaturated oils we have. So I came together with that model, but in my own health, I actually applied it. So I started losing weight. I no longer have pre-diabetes, and I'll never have diabetes. All those blood tests are normalised. My weight came down. I felt better. My blood pressure came down. I came off blood pressure medications. And from my cancer management point of view, which is a personal story, and you can never, it's only an N equals 1, I started feeling better, and I actually stopped my chemotherapy that I'd had for 10 years. And as you guys know, we celebrated last night. I did another scan yesterday, and it's now 6 years. And the thing stopped growing. And so I'm off chemotherapy. I've been running keto myself for some years. And for me, at least, it's made a huge difference. So I've got my own health back, and my tumour has stopped growing. So can I prove that that's going to work for everyone? No, but for my life, myself, it's made a huge difference. So again, around about 6-7 years ago, Belinda said, "Oh, look, you've got to get onto social media. You've got to tell your story. You're seeing all the benefits for your patients, for yourself." And then that's really where I've started applying that to my patients. patients and then my community and then the wider community with social media. And as we talked about, and then that's when the trouble started, when I started getting loud about it.
Right. So just to go back to your patients though, I mean, you work with a lot of, as an orthopedic surgeon, you're often having to remove limbs of patients that are diabetic and that these complications have led to.
Most orthopedic surgeons are looking after the problems of osteoarthritis, and we're doing a lot of hip replacements, knee replacements.
Right.
My practice here in northern Tasmania has a significant amount of lower limb and foot and ankle work that I do. And in the public hospital, I've been looking after most of the diabetic foot complications from an orthopaedic point of view, neuropathy when they lose the sensation, and then you develop ulcers and then infection of the bone. So my practice in the public system is very much weighted down this diabetic foot problem. Mm-hmm. And it's out of control. So whereas you used to see one patient every 6 or 12 months with a new, what we call Charcot foot, which is a diabetic neuropathy as an end stage. Then I started seeing a new patient every couple of weeks.
Oh.
And the end stage of that is amputation of a limb. But every week I've been tending to actually nibble a bit of someone's foot, cleaning a bit of foot, debriding it, and unfortunately, too many times ending up having to do an amputation.
Right. And so now, and then, as you mentioned, that leads to the case where now you're starting to talk to them about low carb, and at the same time getting more involved in social media and talking about it in generally. So that led to the next phase.
Well, I mean, the simple, coming back to the patients with diabetes with complications of foot ulceration, I started, I recommend that what they do is they reduce their sugar and carbs, but most importantly start eating 2 eggs and a piece of cheese, which is getting some protein back into their diet and some healthy fats. And I see as a whole population of these patients, within 6 to 8 weeks, their foot ulcers start to improve. They haven't changed in 6 months or 12 months. And all of a sudden that simple dietary change of protein and healthy fat, and things improve. Those that then decide to drop the sugar and start reducing their carbs, and they start requiring less insulin, less medication, they feel better.
Right. We
start getting control of their health. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. As you know, most of the viewers have actually had their own journey. Once you start seeing a health benefit, you can't stop.
Okay.
And so therefore, 6 years ago, I started having a patient handout, which was really simply at the beginning talking about reducing sugar. That evolved into reducing sugar, carbs, and polyunsaturated oils. But at the beginning of that, I was starting to see those benefits. The patients were seeing the benefit, the community was seeing it. We were starting to spread that information here in Australia, in the wider world, based on social media. Mm-hmm. And that's when the trouble started.
It will happen. Before we go into that though, I just want to go back a little bit about fructose, because I know we talk a lot about sugar and refined carbs and everything, and you're the one person who really focuses on fructose. And I mean, your website was no fructose, and your Twitter handle is fructose no, because the one was taken or something. So tell us the difference between fructose and other sugars, and why fructose in particular you feel is so deadly.
Well, I think it's maybe not so deadly because it's been around for forever, but it's the amount we're having and the frequency we're having.
And that's what's deadly.
And that's the key piece in the equation. So, it's 2018, we actually know a lot more about it, and I think it isn't just fructose, but when I started, I thought that was my first opening into it. And you can't have a website called, no fructose, refined, cut down on sugar, refined carbohydrate, polyunsaturated oils.com, because people forget it, mix it up a bit, and the same thing with a Twitter handle. So, so yes, I did talk about sugar, and particularly fructose. And we need to understand that the latest understanding of fructose metabolism was really only described in 2010. Mm-hmm. And sure, it's been around a little bit, but putting it together only started coming out in that time frame. By Luke Tappy, Robert Lustig, produced his video in the same time frame about fructose metabolism. And I looked into it and I started going, actually this is a centrepiece of which we haven't looked at. My textbooks don't have much at all about fructose. And even the current textbooks have got barely a mention about fructose metabolism. It's in the literature, but it's not in the textbooks. So it's still not really being taught at university. And that, so to me, fructose has got multiple metabolisms. And that's what's on the website, and my talks are about what it gets metabolised into. But the three salient things about fructose is part of it goes down into an aldehyde pathway and it's made into alcohol, and that's how we make alcohol. Wine's made from the fructose component of grapes.
Right.
So we actually have that same metabolism in our liver. So if we actually have too much fructose, we're actually fermenting into alcohol in our liver. So that is part of the cause of liver damage. The other effect is that it inhibits a chemical called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is critical to control of our blood pressure, controls how cells move, and particularly white cells move through the body. And when you inhibit that, when you stop the ability of blood vessels to control, then we get hypertension. And then if we have too much sugar in our diet, we actually slow the way that white cells move through the body. So again, that's where our immune system is dampened by too much fructose. The third and the critical pathway is that fructose is metabolised ultimately into small, dense lipoproteins, what we call, I hate the term, but the bad cholesterol particle, because it's thrown around.
Right, it's not really cholesterol. Huh?
It's not cholesterol, but it is it's an LDL,
it's carrier,
and it's
right?
the smallest LDL. So the LDLs are an oval. There's a lot of them. They talk about 6 ranges.
Right.
But we're talking about the small ones. Mm-hmm. And I call them the Goldilocks particles. They're just the right size or the wrong size to sneak into the blood vessel walls. Mm-hmm. And they sit there. Now, if we just have fructose in nature, which comes in fruit, that's not a problem, because the particles actually sneak into the blood vessel wall, they're metabolised and cleaned away. They're actually under the influence of vitamin D. So our fruit's normally available in summer. Mm-hmm. Summer's got plenty of vitamin D.
Right. Yeah,
so you metabolise fructose in your blood vessel wall under the influence of vitamin D. We clear it away. It's not a problem. But if we have fructose all year round and the sun's not out, and we have massive amounts of it, we've got a lot of this metabolism occurring in the blood vessel wall, which out of season. The kicker, the two flow-ons from that is that the oils that we eat in our diet, the fats we eat in our diet, then actually become in those particles. So if you have saturated fat in the diet, which is healthy fats, then those particles don't really become inflamed at all. But the problem is we're having massive amounts of polyunsaturated oils, the seed oils, the vegetable oils,
right.
And that's kicked up the inflammatory component of those particles sitting in the blood vessel wall. I do this diagrammatically in the talk.
In your talk, right. So they should go and just quickly tell them where they can go and
you go to nofructose.com,
okay.
Or you can look up on our YouTube channel, and talks on nutrition and inflammation, they're all there.
Okay, good.
And they're not long, and it's all follow the pathways.
Awesome. Yeah, so I really advise people to go and check that out.
The role of carbohydrates is interesting because there's a little known pathway called the polyol pathway. And in a normal situation, if you eat carbohydrates in any form, about 3% of those particles get turned into fructose. And there's some good reasons for that in nature, but nonetheless, that's a natural phenomenon. But if you're insulin resistant or you're obese, or your blood glucose gets up above 7, instead of 3% of the carbohydrate getting turned into fructose, it's around about 40%. Wow. So therefore, when you think, you might not think you're eating sugar or you're not eating fructose, but if you're having a bowl of pasta, which has maybe got 20 teaspoons of glucose in it, and you're overweight and or insulin resistant, instead of, you think you're not eating sugar, but in fact 40% of it, you're actually having an extra 8 teaspoons of fructose hitting the system, which has all that problems of nitric oxide, goes down the aldehyde pathway, affects the liver, and most importantly goes into those LDL particles in the blood vessel wall. they become oxidised, inflammation. All of a sudden, our diet is creating inflammation in every blood vessel or in every organ of the body, right from our eyes, brain, kidneys, heart, whatever. It's right there.
Right.
So welcome to inflammation. And if you're chronically inflamed, you feel sick, and then that inflamed organ is then susceptible to other damage.
Right. And so in terms of heart health, that's where you're getting calcification going on and build up in the arteries, which eventually can lead to
that's another issue, calcification. We can travel down the vitamin K2 pathway, but it's anything that's inflamed essentially is not working properly. And once it's not working properly, it's like if you run down, you're more likely to get struck down with a virus and a head cold. So I actually think if we're chronically inflamed, every organ in the body is just waiting to be hit.
Right.
And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a rise in mental health issues. We're seeing a rise in modern disease, cancer, diabetes, everything. And so it's an all-encompassing concept. But as a jigsaw puzzle, it's all based on basic biochemistry. And when you start doing the opposite of it, which is reducing your sugar, your carbs, and getting back to your natural healthy fats, then we're seeing the health benefits.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know Tim Noakes, when I spoke with him, he mentioned his thought at that time anyway was that all of these chronic diseases are all like a symptom almost of a fundamental underlying disease, which he said was insulin resistance. But in the end, that's leading to chronic inflammation, and so any of these diseases are just manifestations of a basic chronic illness that all of us are suffering from.
Insulin resistance is that another layer to it, in that I think inflammation is critical. Insulin resistance really comes about after our chronic carbohydrate load, so that we're actually, the more carbohydrate you eat, then the more you actually need insulin to actually metabolize it.
With it, yeah.
And then the system basically gets resistant or tired. I use I talk about fuels and a fire. So if you've got a wood fire, you can put kindling in it, you can put branches, or you can put logs in it. And our mitochondria, the engines of our body, can actually need acetyl-CoA, that's their wood. And you can either put carbohydrate in, or protein, or healthy fats, which are the ketones. So the analogy is that the carbohydrates, the kindling, protein is the branches, and the healthy fats are the logs. So if you're thinking about your wood firebox, you've got a choice. The fire doesn't care where the fuel comes from. You can keep putting kindling into it, but you're going to have to get up and down, up and down, up and down, open the door, shut the door. And that's the pancreas, that's the insulin. Or you can put a few branches in, or you can put a few logs in, and then your pancreas is actually not going to do anything. So if you're chronically getting up and down, then that's, in the simplest terms, insulin resistance.
Right.
And so ultimately your hinges wear out, your doors, your firebox is going up and down, it's getting hot, running down, and you're fueling it. And it's those rapid changes in heat which are causing damage to your fire, or to the, your firebox.
Right.
And the same thing goes with the body. In the simplistic terms, too much carbohydrate, too much ups and downs in your blood glucose, too much, and that's associated with insulin resistance. The damage of that high glucose in the body is actually quite interesting. I talk about the Maillard reaction, which is a cooking term. And that's Maillard reaction. When you put a piece of bread in the toaster, you heat it up, it goes brown. And in that mechanism is that the glucose in the piece of bread combines with the protein under the effect of heat and goes brown. Now, the exact same thing occurs in your tissue. If your blood glucose goes up, about 2/3 of that gets into the tissue, and that extra extra glucose in your tissue can't be metabolized. And so it actually combines with the protein called glycation under the influence of heat. So every time your blood glucose jumps up, and this is diabetes, this is it. This is the damage of diabetes. Every time your blood glucose goes up, you're toasting your brain, you're toasting your eyes, you're toasting your tissues, your kidneys. And that's what I see at the end of the leg. The tissues are toasted. You know, they're like a piece of toast, they're not pliable, they've lost their elasticity. The blood vessels are inflamed because of the fructose, and then we've got this Maillard reaction occurring. And you know, if you get a piece of bread, fresh bread, you can roll it up into a ball. You get a piece of toast, it just crumbles.
Right.
And that's diabetes. So I'm agreeing with Tim that insulin resistance is there, but I actually think it's more than that. I think it's inflammation,
Right.
of which the standard Australian, American, African, whatever diet they say, concept is there. But that combination, so we've got this massive fructose load, carbohydrate load, which goes into fructose, but also goes into the tissues and the pancreatic failure. Then combine it with the polyunsaturated oils. Now I realise that's complex, but again, that's what I've put together in these 20, 30 minutes talks with lots of diagrams.
Right.
Watch it all come together, and there it is. We've got a perfect model of inflammation, and the extrapolation's got a perfect model of modern disease. But we've also got potentially the antidote, which is called prevention.
Right, which the community, the medical community, right, as a whole right now is not embracing.